Every flight, from a Cessna to a Boeing 777, depends on one key element: precise navigation. For decades, pilots have trusted a system that transmits invisible signals through the sky, a system that guides aircraft across continents, through clouds, and onto unfamiliar runways. This system is called the VHF Omnidirectional Range, or simply, VOR, which is the foundation of modern radio navigation. But how does it work? Why is it still relevant today? And what exactly should every pilot know about it? Welcome to AeroMinds Training Center, where aviation theory meets real-world flying. In this lesson, we'll break down the VOR system clearly, visually, and practically, perfect for exam prep, flight training, or just becoming a sharper aviator. Let's dive into the world of VOR. The VHF Omnidirectional Range was adopted back in 1960 as the standard short-range navigation aid for aviation. It provides aircraft with accurate bearing information, usually aligned with magnetic north at the station. Unlike older navigation systems, VOR is free from static interference and isn't affected by sky waves, which means it can be used reliably both during day and night. It operates in the VHF frequency band from 108 to 117.95 MHz. When VOR is paired with a co-located DME, pilots get both bearing and range. This is known as a row theta fix. Now, where is VOR used? It marks the beginning, centerline, and end points of airways. It helps in let-down procedures during approach. It serves as a holding fix for aircraft. And it provides navigational position lines for en route flying. In short, it is a foundational tool for both visual and instrument navigation. Now let's understand the basic principle behind how VOR gives us a bearing. The VOR station transmits two signals simultaneously. One is a 30 Hz frequency modulated omnidirectional reference signal and the other is a 30 Hz amplitude modulated variable signal that rotates around the station like a lighthouse beam. This is known as the Limicon pattern. Your aircraft's VOR receiver measures the phase difference between these two signals. When the aircraft is directly north of the VOR station, both signals arrive in phase. At any other position, the angular phase difference between the two signals tells the receiver your magnetic bearing from the VOR. The two signals are modulated differently, one frequency modulated and one amplitude modulated, to prevent interference at the receiver. This clever system allows a pilot to know exactly what radial they're on, just by measuring signal timing. In older systems, the rotation of the directional signal was done mechanically, but today's VOR use electronic circuitry to simulate this rotation. Let's now talk about the frequencies used by VOR stations. VOR operates in the VHF band, which ranges from 30 to 300 MHz, but VOR beacons specifically transmit between 108.00 to 117.95 MHz. This range is divided into two parts. The lower band, 108.0 to 112.0 MHz, has 40 channels. This range is mainly used by ILS systems, but International Civil Aviation Organization has allowed it to be shared with some short-range VOR and terminal VOR, or TVOR. Frequencies in this band follow a specific pattern. They include even decimals and even decimals plus 0.05 MHz. For example, 108.00 and 108.25 and so on up to 111.85. The upper band, 112.0 to 117.95 MHz, contains 120 channels, spaced at every 0.05 MHz. VOR signals use an Alpha 9er Whiskey emission type. Alpha means amplitude modulation with a double sideband carrier. 9 indicates a composite transmission system. And Whiskey shows a combination of telegraphy, telephony, and telemetry. In simple terms, this means VOR transmits audio tones, identification, and navigation data, all packed into one carrier wave. Now let's look at the different types of VOR you'll come across as a pilot or CPL student. Each has a specific role based on location, power, and function. CVOR, which means conventional VOR. This is the most common type used to define airways and for en route navigation. BVOR, which means broadcast VOR. These transmit weather and airfield information between the VOR's MOS ident. DVOR, which means Doppler VOR. This uses Doppler technology to reduce sight error. It's more accurate than CVOR, especially where terrain or buildings cause distortion. TVOR, which means terminal VOR. These have low power and cover only a short range. They are mainly used at or near major airports. VOT, which means VOR test facility, found at some airfields. This broadcasts a fixed omnidirectional 360 degrees test radial. It's not for navigation, but to check VOR receiver accuracy before IFR flights. If your reading is off by more than ±4 degrees, the instrument needs servicing. VOR TAC. This is a combination of VOR and TACAN, providing both bearing and DME range to civil and military aircraft. As a student, you may see all these on charts, so it's important to know what each type does. Now let's take a look at the VOR equipment on board the aircraft. There are three main components every aircraft uses to receive and display VOR information. First component is the aerial or antenna. Slower aircraft, like general aviation planes, usually have a whip-type antenna mounted on the fuselage. High-speed aircraft, like jets, use blade antennas or flush-mounted ones on either side of the vertical fin. Second component is the receiver. This is the main VOR processing unit. It's usually installed in the avionics bay of the aircraft and is responsible for decoding the signal received by the aerial. Third component is the indicator. The decoded information is then displayed on cockpit instruments such as the CDI course deviation indicator, the RMI radiomagnetic indicator, or even integrated into the flight director system on more advanced aircraft. These indicators help the pilot stay on course, interpret radial deviations, and navigate accurately, especially in IFR conditions. Let's now understand the factors that affect the operational range of a VOR station. First, and most obvious, the transmitter power. A standard en route VOR with around 200 watts of power can have a range of up to 200 nautical miles. A terminal VOR, or TVOR, usually transmits at around 50 watts, offering a much shorter range. Second, the height of both the transmitter and receiver plays a key role. Since VOR operates on line of sight, the higher the aircraft and the station, the farther the signal can travel. There's even a simple formula to estimate the maximum theoretical reception range. Range in nautical miles equals 1.23 multiplied by under root h1 plus under root h2. Where h1 is the height of the receiver, your aircraft, in feet. h2 is the height of the transmitter, the VOR station, in feet. But range isn't the only concern. We also have to think about interference and distortion. Uneven terrain, high ground, mountains, and even man-made structures can block the signal, called screening, reflect it, or bend it, creating an error known as scalloping. These result in bearing errors. Your VOR receiver might show a slightly incorrect radial. If such errors are known, they're published in the AIP. For example, errors up to 5.5 degrees may be experienced in sector 315 to 345 up to 40 nautical miles. So as a pilot, always check NOTAMs and AIP when flying near complex terrain or unfamiliar stations. While VOR is generally very reliable, it's not perfect. Several factors affect its accuracy, and as a CPL pilot, you need to understand all of them. Sight error. This is caused by uneven terrain, man-made structures, trees, or even long grass near the VOR transmitter. These obstacles interfere with how the signal is radiated, causing what's called VOR course displacement error. Ground beacons are carefully monitored, and this type of error is usually kept within ±1 degrees. Propagation error. Once the signal leaves the beacon, it can still be distorted further, especially over long distances or near rough terrain. This distortion is called scalloping, where reflected signals cause the VOR needle to wander side to side, slowly or rapidly. Airborne equipment error. Inside the aircraft, your VOR receiver decodes the phase difference and converts it to a radial. Even the best equipment can have an error margin of about ±3 degrees. Pilotage error. As you approach the VOR station, the radials get closer together, making it harder to stay exactly centered on course. This increases pilot-induced deviation. When all these errors are combined, sight error, propagation error, equipment error, and pilot error, the total maximum expected error is about ±5 degrees. And remember, if large errors are expected near a particular VOR, they'll usually be published in the AIP. So that was the complete breakdown of the VOR navigation system, from how it works to the different types, equipment, range factors, and errors. Whether you are preparing for your CPL exams or brushing up on real-world navigation, mastering the VOR is an essential step in becoming a confident pilot. If you found this video helpful, don't forget to follow AeroMinds on Instagram for regular aviation updates, notes, reels, and more. You got questions? Drop them in the comments, we reply to every genuine query. New videos on navigation, meteorology, air regulations, and more are on the way, so stay tuned. Until then, fly safe, study smart. See you in the next video.